On the morning of September 11, 2001, the United States experienced the deadliest terrorist attack in its history. Passenger planes hijacked by al-Qaeda terrorists slammed into the Twin Towers in New York and the Pentagon in Washington, while another crashed in Pennsylvania after passengers fought back. Nearly 3,000 innocent lives were lost. The shock was global, but for the CIA, it was personal. Their mission changed overnight. America was at war with a shadowy enemy, and the CIA was tasked with finding the mastermind behind the attacks, Osama bin Laden. Bin Laden wasn't a stranger. The CIA already knew him. Throughout the 1990s, bin Laden had been rising as a dangerous figure, issuing fatwas declaring war on America, and directing attacks against U.S. embassies in Africa and the USS Cole. Intelligence officers had been chasing him for years, but on 9/11, the hunt transformed into the CIA's single greatest mission. Within hours, CIA officers began piecing together the evidence. The fingerprints of al-Qaeda were everywhere, the tactics, the scale, the martyrdom videos left behind by the hijackers. The president made it clear, the CIA had to find bin Laden wherever he was hiding. The challenge was immense. Bin Laden had vanished into the rugged mountains of Afghanistan. He had loyal fighters, money, and deep connections. Capturing him wouldn't be as simple as sending in troops. This was going to be a war of patience, intelligence, and shadows. The CIA began by launching one of the fastest covert operations in history. Within weeks of the 9/11 attacks, a small team of CIA paramilitary officers and case officers, codenamed Team Jawbreaker, flew into Afghanistan. They carried cash, satellite phones, and a mission: link up with Afghan allies, gather intelligence, and begin dismantling al-Qaeda. These officers operated in secrecy, often behind enemy lines, working with Afghan warlords and militias. Their job wasn't just to fight, it was to gather clues. Every intercepted radio call, every captured document, every whispered rumor about where bin Laden might be hiding was gold. The early years were frustrating. In late 2001, bin Laden was cornered at the Tora Bora mountains. CIA reports indicated he was there, surrounded by caves and loyal fighters. U.S. aircraft bombed the area heavily, and Afghan militias were sent in to finish the job. But bin Laden escaped. Whether by slipping through mountain passes at night or bribing his way out, no one knows for sure. But to the CIA, it was devastating. They had him in their sights and lost him. For years after Tora Bora, the trail went cold. Bin Laden seemed to vanish. Some believed he was dead. Others thought he was hiding in caves along the Afghanistan-Pakistan border. The CIA refused to give up. Instead, they switched tactics. Rather than chasing bin Laden directly, they began hunting his network. Al-Qaeda operatives, couriers, and safe houses became the focus. If they couldn't find bin Laden, they would dismantle everyone around him until the trail led back to the leader himself. This required enormous patience. CIA officers sifted through fragments of information, intercepted phone calls, scraps of letters, financial transfers, and testimony from captured terrorists. Every small piece had to be verified, cross-checked, and followed up. Slowly, one thread began to stand out: bin Laden's use of couriers. He didn't trust phones, the internet, or anything traceable. Instead, he relied on a small circle of trusted men to deliver messages. If the CIA could find these couriers, they might lead to bin Laden. By 2007, after years of analysis, one courier drew particular attention. His alias was Abu Ahmed al-Kuwaiti. Multiple detainees mentioned him as a man close to bin Laden. But where was he? And could he lead them to the target? The CIA intensified its hunt. Teams were deployed, surveillance increased, and signals intelligence was used to track movements. It took years. But finally, in 2010, a break came. The CIA located a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. Unlike the other houses in the city, this one was peculiar. It was massive, with walls up to 18 feet high. Barbed wire lined the top. There were no phone lines, no internet. The residents burned their trash instead of leaving it out. And inside, a mysterious tall man lived in seclusion. The CIA called him the Pacer, because he was often seen walking in circles in the courtyard. They suspected he was bin Laden, but there was no proof. Now came the toughest decision of all: what to do next. By 2010, the CIA had spent nearly a decade chasing shadows. Now, for the first time, they had a strong lead, a compound in Abbottabad, Pakistan. But they couldn't be certain. Was the tall figure inside Osama bin Laden? Or was it someone else? The agency couldn't afford another Tora Bora. This time, they needed ironclad intelligence. For months, surveillance teams monitored the compound. They studied its routines. When people came and went, how food was delivered, even the way laundry was hung out to dry. Every detail was scrutinized. One thing stood out. The compound had no phone lines or internet. In the modern world, that was highly unusual. Who could live in a giant house and never use a phone? That alone suggested someone important was hiding inside. The CIA analysts debated for weeks. Some were convinced the pacer was bin Laden. Others warned it could be a mistake. What if it was just a wealthy recluse? What if the operation failed on Pakistani soil, leading to a diplomatic disaster? The decision went all the way to the top. President Barack Obama listened carefully as the CIA presented its case. The evidence was compelling, but not 100%. In intelligence work, certainty is rare. At best, they had a high probability. Obama faced one of the hardest decisions of his presidency: take the risk or wait and possibly lose bin Laden forever. In the spring of 2011, the order was given. The mission was a go. The CIA partnered with the elite Navy SEALs from SEAL Team 6. Months of training began. A replica of the Abbottabad compound was built on U.S. soil, so the SEALs could rehearse every possible scenario. The CIA provided every scrap of intelligence: the layout of the compound, the guard routines, the location of potential doors and walls. On the night of May 1, 2011, helicopters lifted off from Afghanistan carrying the SEALs. Flying low to avoid radar, they crossed into Pakistan. Inside CIA headquarters, officers held their breath, watching the operation unfold in real time through drone feeds and radio transmissions. As the SEALs approached the compound, one of the helicopters suffered mechanical failure and crashed inside the walls. The mission could have collapsed right there. But the SEALs pressed forward. They breached doors, cleared rooms, and fought through resistance. Within minutes, they reached the upper floors. There, in a dimly lit bedroom, they found him. Osama bin Laden, the man behind the 9/11 attacks, the figure who had eluded the world's most powerful intelligence agencies for a decade, was dead. News of the operation spread like wildfire. Crowds gathered outside the White House, cheering and waving flags. For the CIA, it was the end of their longest, toughest manhunt. But the mission carried lessons. Intelligence work is rarely about sudden breakthroughs. It's about persistence, patience, and piecing together fragments over years. The CIA's hunt for bin Laden proved that intelligence isn't just about technology. It's about human sources, analysis, and the willingness to follow the smallest clues. It also showed the risks. For every success, there are countless failures, blind alleys, and dangers. The CIA officers who spent years in dusty outposts, listening to whispers and tracking shadows, rarely made headlines. But without them, the operation in Abbottabad would never have happened. The capture and killing of Osama bin Laden was more than just a military victory. It was a message. To America, it was justice for 9/11. To the world, it was proof that no matter how long it takes, no enemy is beyond the reach of intelligence. This was the CIA's toughest mission, and it changed history.